This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Heath Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
I'm so excited to be back.
Where's the balloons? Where's all the noise? We're celebrating. Yeah, there we go. Wow, everybody. Thank you for listening to us for how many years?
This is our 4th year of doing the Heath Geeks Book Club and the 3rd year of the podcast.
Absolutely. We've loved it. And Tim, you've been such an integral part to this whole thing for us.
Well, thank you. I went from just being producer Tim to actually being part. And I enjoy it. And thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey.
Well, you are a guinea pig, you know.
Of course. I have always been that for everybody. So I'm glad whenever I have two wonderful people like Kristen and Eleanor to do that to me. I'm all for it.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes.
We have enjoyed doing this. And, you know, this journey, I remember actually this morning I was thinking about how did Kristen and I actually land on this? And it's serendipitous, I think, because we both know so many other people. We didn't really know each other.
We didn't.
No. And we just had a common interest, and we approached each other and said, well, let's do this. And here we are, this many years later.
Yeah. Both working in the health and wellness industry and hearing all kinds of stories and questions from people that we've interacted with.
And our own curiosity.
And we felt like we were the only two in the whole world that like to read these books.
Exactly, yeah. But we thought there must be some other people.
That's right.
And we're looking for you.
Wow. It turns out people like to hear all about these books. Some of you like to read them with us. Some of you like to just be in the know. And, you know, the why for me is I want to be up to date, and I love reading these books, but I need the accountability to finish them. So I have an entire bookshelf that'll just sit there unless I have a reason to read and come talk with you, Eleanor, and report to you listeners.
Yeah, I think as independent businesswomen, because we are building our own businesses, right? We're not in an umbrella under someone else.
Right.
That our professional development is critical. And that's true for all professions.
Absolutely.
And so they have these things called continuing education units in these other industries that people have to collect to stay current, even though they've got their credentials and they've got some experience. The idea that if you're going to have an opinion or a recommendation or build a service or something, people have to have confidence in that. So that's one of the things I think we were both interested in is remaining, well informed, so that whatever we're engaged with our clients, that they have some level of confidence that we're not just opinionated because we like something. It's like we've studied it a little bit, and we've been critical in that.
And critical is the thing. I was just thinking as you were speaking that, another goal we have as we read these books is, who is writing this? Is this something that's going to work for everybody? Is this something that's going to work for some people? And, I think that's an important part of our reading. Yeah,
the quality of the information. And we're getting better at our skills at that, I think, is how do you evaluate the megaton of information that's coming at everybody from so many different sources that a critical analysis may be in our best interest.
Yeah. So a fun side effect of all this reading is that we get to implement some of these lessons from our books into our everyday lives.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I had minestrone for breakfast the last 3 days. And that's something that in my past life I probably would not have even thought of doing. But, after some reading, I've decided I'll experiment with some of these things. And that is fun to, try them out for a while.
Yeah. So I think you're talking about the glucose revolution, where she says a savory breakfast is a good idea.
Yes, as well as the Blue Zone.
The Blue Zone.
And I think another thing that's been interesting, Kristen, for me is now that we've done this for 3 years and we've read, you and I have talked about the holistic wellness wheel, which involves sectors of wellness, like sleep and emotional health and physical health, environmental health, blah, blah. But when you read multiple opinions or discourses in each of those areas, they start saying some of the same things.
Yeah.
And there's a connection. And they're basing their writing, the ones that we've looked at have substantial references attached to them. So these are well-informed opinions. And then when you start seeing people joining in that whole idea, it gives you a little more confidence to try things. And so, yes, the Glucose Goddess, I don't know that I would have bumped into her, but one of our listeners actually suggested that we read that.
That's right. And ever since we've read that, I keep seeing her pop up all over with interviews with big people.
Right. And the same thing with the Blue Zones, because that was the kind of foundational work of looking around the globe at how come some people are living to over 100? What are they doing? And then what is the common thing between them? And it's a fascinating thing. And so Dan Buettner is the fellow that wrote that book.
I had a listener, actually, and you know who you are, said she went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, have you heard of this Blue Zones? You should look into it. And she goes, actually, from a podcast, the Health Geeks Book Club podcast.
Yippee.
So
you get a star
I
out
like
there.
to think we're informing people of important things out there
Right.
and good books to read.
Yeah. And then sleep, Jay Shetty, I think remembering him as one of our first reads on why we sleep.
He was the monk.
Yeah, think like a monk. Yeah, that idea of mindfulness, and that has been a current through a lot of these books too. And sometimes it's not as overtly talked about, but you and I get to talk about it on the podcast, saying, I think what they're talking about here is
relates to this.
Yes,
yeah.
And we did a book on tapping. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the books that will get into emotional or behavioral topics, we'll talk about cognitive behavior therapy, but they don't go the next step to in freedom technique.
Right, which we learned from that book that it can be as effective as
which is even a newer addition to that toolkit that these folks have. So, this has just been a journey of discovery. My vocabulary is getting a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
I feel like these authors are my friends now.
I agree. And then when I see other authors and other books, I'm like, oh, hey, I know him too.
Yeah. We're all in the same fan club.
And I've heard so many. The one that I hear the most about is the Blue Zones and the Atomic Habits. That continuously comes up in so many aspects. None of it has anything to do with anything else that I've heard it from. And I'm like, someone else is talking about that, because it really goes with everything. So I just always find that funny, because, I am not a reader of stuff like this. I really don't read a whole lot of other things other than articles and music things. But when something comes through that you guys have talked about, I'm like, I know about that.
Yeah.
And I get excited. And
like,
usually I'm not excited about things like that, but I know about this.
I'm in the know too.
I am.
Well, if you like being in the know, please make sure you like this podcast and share it with other people who may like it too. That really helps us continue to do what we do. So,
do we want to tell them about what we're going to be reading?
We do.
Is that where you were headed?
Yes.
Oh, good.
I was going to explain that we're kind of taking a seasonal approach. We are starting our spring season of the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, and we wanted to share some of the books ahead of time, so you can go ahead and purchase those books, read along with us maybe.
Yeah, and Tim, do we have an Amazon site that they could purchase these books from?
Well, it's not an Amazon site, but on our website, there's a bookstore that you can purchase from the link. So just go
and it
to
helps us keep the going.
And so whenever if they like it, they go to our website, which is healthgeekspodcast.com. And there's a bookstore.
Okay.
And each individual post has it in there as well. But there's a bookstore where you can see all of them laid out. And they can click on one of those and they can purchase right there. And we'll give you the upfront. It is an affiliate link. So anything that you purchase, we might make some royalties or commission on. It's not. It's not.
The podcast.
It does help support the podcast. It's not groundbreaking, but every penny counts.
All right. Well, drum roll, please.
Okay, give us the drum roll. All right, the titles coming up: Outlive by Peter Attia, Happy Money by Ken Honda, and then we have some other ones: The Happiness Trap, How Your Emotions Are Made, Burnout, Fiber Fueled, Flavor. How's that for a start?
I'm excited.
I am too, and I've already bought a couple of these because I can't wait to get started on them.
So you mentioned the wellness wheel. We're really trying to get all kinds of books in, from emotional health to, stress management to health, environment. So like right now we've got Flavor talking about food science. We've got Outlive that's talking about longevity and health, and a little bit of mental health in there too.
And Fiber Fueled is going to talk about the gut.
Fiber Fueled is
Maybe, I don't know. I'm thinking.
nutrition one. Yay.
And The Happiness Trap, emotional.
Yeah, so get your books, read along with us. We hope that y'all will interact. We have a Facebook page that you can find us at. We have a phone number you can call and leave us messages. We'd love to hear what you're reading, hear what you loved about a podcast. That number is
336-422-6862.
Thank you.
Well, I can't wait to open the next book.
Me either. Well, thank you so much for going on this journey with us and being here for the book club. We're excited to have a season ahead of us and open up our 4th year of the book club.
Yay!
So the Health Geek Book Club is part of the Less Desirables Podcast Network, if you didn't know, where you can listen to our podcast, as well as the Less Desirables, Fan Interference, The Man Away to Town, Wheeler's Dog, Beeswax Final Daily, and the new Pan a Pan podcast, just to name a few. You can listen to our podcast on our website or any podcatcher of your choice, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, basically anywhere you find podcasts. And of course, on the Less Desirables Network page, tldpodnetwork.com. If you have something to say to us, you can email comments at healthgeekspodcast.com. You can look us up on the social channels like Kristen said. And if you want to be really cool, call and leave a voicemail on that 336-422-6862 number. We will play your voicemail on the air.
And I'm Kristen Norton from Well Balanced Nutrition.
And I'm Eleanor Russell from 360 Health.
And opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.